They killed the general investment account and now they want to kill the ISA too. This could ruin our investing goals and kill any dreams of retiring early. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor of the UK, is being urged to cap the total tax-free amount Britons can save in an ISA at £100,000. And this is because savings help the rich, not the poor. ISAs currently offer tax relief to 1.5 million people in the UK, and they say it could save the government around £1 billion per year by 2023-2024. The think tank behind it says the money could be used to help households without saving. I know that's a lot to unpack, so let's do it and I'll share my thoughts on what this means for us. First, who are the Resolution Foundation that created this report? They're an independent think tank who are focused on improving living standards of those who they class as low to middle incomes, typically below the average median salary in the UK. So realistically, it's no surprise how this report has come out. Now I have to say, some of their research is very good, especially around inflation and the cost of living data, but this report, which is entitled ISA Baby, seems more of a mockery than a real report. And its goal is assessing the government's policies to encourage household saving, which should be titled How to Discourage Household Saving. The report states that we're currently spending over $2 billion on those with ISA savings over 100,000, while 750 families have no savings at all, and is not what a good use of Treasury resources looks like. The Chancellor can address both problems in this upcoming budget by massively expanding Help to Save for low-income families and scaling back tax-free savings for already very rich individuals. Now I have over 100,000 in my ISA, and with £800 in my current account, living in a cheap terrace house and a cheap car I paid off, I certainly like the compliment, but I wouldn't class myself as very rich by any means. There's some interesting data that's come from this report, which I think is open for interpretation. They found that the UK is not very good at saving. The line on this chart represents how far out we are on the range of other G7 countries, and this is across the board of different income groups. They also researched how much of savings different income groups have in their ISA, although from this chart, except for the lowest in the report, they all are in the 20% range. Their data shows the growth in the amount of income that's held in ISAs by year, and realise how much tax they could be getting if they decided to cap the limit. And the great thing for them would be anyone who's using an ISA, their money would compound, and for everyone who holds those accounts, more and more people would eventually hit the 100k limit. It also shows that by income group, the people earning the most money have the most in ISAs. No huge surprise there. The big problem and the danger with this report is it just doesn't account for people's personal circumstance. For example, last year their report would look at me, a male in his 30s with over 100k in an ISA, as being super rich, when in actual fact I was self-employed, I've saved heavily for the majority of my life, no pension, and that is the only savings I have, one for retirement and two in case something went drastically wrong with my business. It really is my safety net. And even in a later life example, it may look at someone who's 60 years old who has 600k in an ISA as rich. But what if that's their entire pension, which will eventually dwindle down to zero by the time they die? On the surface of it, making a rash judgment based on stats might seem good, but designing a flexible system and then turning around and changing it is quite dangerous. The main issue I see and what they should really be focusing on is proper financial education. It's easy to look at someone as having 100k as a rich person, but a regular person who put £180 into an ISA when they just launched in 1999, and let's say that grew 5% a year, they would now have way over 100k. It essentially punishes people who are working hard to do the right thing. 100,000 is not the investment pot of a rich person by any means. The cap would essentially help destroy the UK saving culture, and there's a good chance if this tax goes through, pensions would be the next target. The question then becomes, where will the government be when we're all living in poverty in retirement? Surely we should be praised and encouraged for doing the right thing rather than penalised. The truth is though, in part, although it's not mentioned in the report, realistically the government don't want people to be able to retire at 50 or 40. It doesn't benefit them in tax if you don't pay as much income tax into the system, 18 or 28 years earlier than you should. And this is also why I believe there isn't financial education. It benefits them far more if you work until you're 68 and don't have tax-free savings. The worst thing about this to me is it just fuels the divide. I don't think in my life I've ever felt so much of a divide in people as there is today, which is quite sad. On one side you've got the left who feel hard done to and they feel like the rich just get richer. And on the right you've got people who believe people are lazy and they get everything for nothing. Then you've got people like me who sit in the middle, look at them all making weird noises at each other in their Oxbridge club thinking, Is this really the people who are running our country? It's almost like reports like this completely pass the buck on who the rich really are, and have us pointing the fingers at each other rather than the real people. Like someone earning 100k a year is suddenly this evil, greedy rich person getting richer and richer, who realistically is on 66,000 per year after they pay their 34,000 in income tax. Doctors and dentists, which we're already in shortage of, IT professionals or business owners who could already earn double the salary or receive huge tax benefits if they moved overseas. Do we really want to encourage them even more to leave the country in a time where we're struggling to get any growth in the UK? And realistically, if they implement this change, they won't take any money over 100k out of an ISA. They'll just implement a cap for any future growth. So if you're already at say 500k, you'll be just fine, which will mostly impact younger people, which will then just create an even larger wealth gap in the UK. Essentially, what this report wanted to do is, instead of having people rewarded for putting money away, it should be taxed heavily to help those who haven't saved. Instead, we should be just encouraging the use of ISAs and increasing financial education. Not one mention of an ISA, savings or investing was ever mentioned to me in high school. I actually have quite a controversial view on the way we're taxed, and I believe it should all be equal. Sure, give some relief to the lower incomes that need it to maintain a good standard of living, but taxing people 45% at a higher tax bracket to me essentially says, if you're successful, we're going to penalise you for it. And if you're really successful, you're better off using a creative tax strategy or relocating your business to another country, which to me is just completely wrong. They need to be focusing their time on the real rich, companies who sell hundreds of millions in our country and pay less than 10% tax or zero, not our hardworking doctors who we're already short on. So what does this actually mean? Well, if we look at how an ISA is already taxed, it's quite crazy. All of the money you put into your ISA, you already pay income tax on. You then assume all risk by investing it for the chance it will hopefully grow. And the money you take out of that ISA, you spend and pay 20% tax through VAT. Then, when you die, you'll pay 40% inheritance tax on anything over 325,000. So now what they're proposing is the profit you made on your ISA would be fine. But then when you demonstrate it over say 20 years, 100k in your ISA with no extra contributions at 5% return would leave you with 265,000. But with 20,000 contributed each year, it would leave you with 926,000. Not everyone would be able to achieve that, I doubt I'll be able to achieve that, but they want to stop people who can or are striving towards it. Instead, they want you to put it in a general investment account and pay income tax on any profits over £3,000, now that they've reduced it down from 12,300 already. Now, even if this goes ahead, which I don't think it will, as it will be a final nail in the coffin for the Conservatives, it surprisingly wouldn't be the end of the world. The difference between an ISA and a SIPP is actually quite negligible. In fact, it does tip slightly towards a SIPP for retirement. The downside though is an ISA does really give you so much more freedom, and it's the best answer to retiring before 57, as you can use it to knock off the years. I think it's much more likely that the amount you'll be able to contribute to an ISA will be possibly reduced to £12,000. I will keep you guys updated on all of these changes and how it affects you, so make sure you subscribe if you aren't already. And my best piece of advice right now, and what I'm going to do, is make sure you fill those allowances as soon as possible. I was on the fence about filling my allowance this year, and now I'm 100% maxing it out, as we just don't know how long it'll last. If a cap does come or the amount gets lowered, it's important to get as much as you can in there as soon as possible. If it happens, I would continue to max out as much as possible, and I'd put the rest into my pension. And in some ways, I already have the pressure of trying to save 20,000 into an ISA and 32,000 into my pension, so it could even make my decisions about investing a little easier. Perhaps it would force me into spending more money on things like experiences. If you've got any questions or thoughts about the whole situation, let me know in the comments, and don't worry, we're all in this together.